In 1798, the Irish took a major stand against British rule, one in a long line of pushes for total sovereignty of the island, which some might say still carries on even until today. This particular rebellion came in the midst of the Republican Revolution sparked in the wake of American independence, though more directly through the revolution in France, where the monarchy had been violently overthrown and power vested into a more democratic republic. What made this rebellion so significant is that it was characterized by a major effort on not only the part of Ireland, but also France, who had been going around spreading republicanism across Europe like the plague. This also marked the origin of Irish republicanism, which eventually would go on to carve out an autonomous Republic of Ireland later down the line. Although this period saw a great paradigm shift for many nations across the European continent and beyond, Ireland's attempt at a Republican revolution amounted to little more than a gruesome exchange of brutality between the British and Irish forces. This was in part due to three major factors. Number one being that much of the experienced and skilled Irish leadership had been executed or assassinated early on, leaving what would have been the momentum of the rising to be dispersed over the course of years following the official end of conflicts in the form of numerous guerrilla raids and attacks by disconnected rebel groups. Secondly, the initial French invasion meant to kick off the rebellion was called off due to bad weather and disagreements over coordination, leaving France to postpone any efforts and gradually lose interest entirely because, thirdly, though revolutionary French forces had been successfully invading the likes of the Italian states and Holy Roman Empire, Ireland was inconveniently disconnected from the mainland and surrounded by the protective sphere of British influence, making it too much of a hassle for Napoleon to be bothered with by the time French forces had a second chance at invasion, resulting in a sloppy minor invasion that was quickly quashed. But what if things had gone differently? Had weather conditions been more appropriate, an early French landing as intended would have supplied Irish rebel forces with significant armaments and a legion of some 14,000 French veterans. It's important to note that most of these Irish rebels were unarmed. The British government had forbade the majority Catholic population from possessing firearms, something which forced the existence of groups such as the Defenders to purchase and defend the possession of weapons against anti-Catholic raiding parties, which sought to disarm the Irish. Had Irish rebel forces had access to the high-grade weaponry that France promised, this alone could have turned things far in their favor. In total, Ireland, with French support, would likely be able to save its major leaders from an early demise, allowing for operations to be coordinated more effectively. Additionally, Irish forces are provided greater firepower from the beginning and managed to secure a large southern portion of the island, as had briefly and less successfully been done in the northwest in our timeline. British General Gerard Lake would still fortify his position in Ulster, which would become a safe haven for British forces, and form a clear border between the land occupied by the Irish rebels and that held by the British. There are a number of ways either side could have mustered a victory, but for this scenario we're going to be favoring the Irish, otherwise things end up just as they had in our world. An Irish victory could end up mirroring the final battles of the American Revolution, with British forces being cornered by enduring opposition claiming a home field advantage, seeing an unrelenting assault by Irish and French forces. Britain's generals would be forced into surrender, and Gerard Lake is made to face consequences for the atrocities committed in Ulster under his supervision as Commander-in-Chief of British troops in Ireland. The British withdraw and the Irish Republicans, with the oversight of France and now Napoleon as First Consul of the Republic, begin the process of republicanizing the island, promoting egalitarianism, freedom of religion, and a democratic Irish parliament, as well as other forms of liberalization. But not all would be well and accepted. An often overlooked factor in the downfall of the 1798 rebellion was the tremendous divisions between the religious sects involved. And that's partially because the rebellion collapsed before these divisions became insurmountable for quite a time. In this world, Ireland has gained its independence, and those seeds of division still exist. As it stood, the Society of United Irishmen, which was the chief faction of the rebellion, was dominated by a minority of Irish Presbyterians with liberal sentiments, something which left much of the majorly Catholic Irish population skeptical, a matter which was not helped by their close allegiance to revolutionary France, who had developed a reputation as anti-clerical and most especially anti-Catholic, a matter made even worse by the fact that France had exiled the Pope from the Papal States and established the highly controversial Roman Republic that very same year. Pre-rebellion, tensions were already rising between the Protestants and Catholics, a matter which British generals, again notably Gerard Lake, had attempted to feed to foster divisions between the population, to prevent a cohesive and thus threatening unity between the Irish people. Further, the promotion of religious tolerance would inadvertently diminish the role of the Catholic Church in Ireland, as what would have been the largest church on the island was now forced to concede what it felt was its rightful authority, to now be shared with the smaller Presbyterian, Anglican, and other Protestant faiths. See, equality sounds nice and all, but when you have 80% of the population pandering to the needs of a minor 20% at expense to themselves, it's understandable how this can feel very unfair. Additional divides would grow along national/ethnic lines, as many of the Irish Protestants, even two of the major military leaders of the United Irishmen, were of either French Huguenot or English ancestry, something serving to more starkly contrast with the Catholics, who were in large part Celtic in ancestry. Napoleon never had a tremendous desire to capture Ireland, however, because in this world a French sympathetic government is now in power, he can use Ireland as leverage against Britain, though in all likelihood this wouldn't amount to much. Despite Ireland's close proximity to Britain, this in itself isn't too significant an advantage for France, who across the Channel is actually closer to major English cities than Ireland is. Britain still undoubtedly maintains naval superiority, and will fend off any attempted invasion of their mainland with ease. However, to do the opposite, to invade Ireland, especially with French backing, is out of the question. In our world, Napoleon had hoped to launch an invasion of Britain in 1798, the same year of the Irish Rebellion, but found himself sidetracked by his campaigns in Egypt and Austria, regarding the invasion as too inconvenient to launch. In this world, the opportunity is too tempting to pass up. Napoleon launches a two-front sea invasion of Great Britain from both French and Irish coasts. Napoleon had prepared well to invade the British mainland, however Britain in turn had prepared for him. A surprise invasion was near impossible as French forces were regularly visible from the fortified British coast, and the Royal Navy would be on high alert in the west following Irish independence. The end result would be a repelling of the French invasion at great cost to both sides, but most especially to the French and Irish. The Napoleonic Wars kick off early without Napoleon yet assuming the role of Emperor of France, and Ireland in the wake of this defeat is immediately destabilized. Whether the Celtic Catholics had lost men in the invasion or saw a weakening of the Northern Protestants' power, the combined social stressors punctuated by this defeat would lead to a Catholic rising within Ireland against the liberal Protestant Republicans. France again could intervene to defend its sister republic, but if it hadn't already been made very clear to France, following this failed invasion, interest in Ireland would be completely gone, and Napoleon's plans would shift back to economically isolating Britain by capturing its major allies on the continent. Thus, Ireland is left in a fit of internal upheaval, sectarian violence characterizing this period that would linger throughout the remaining Napoleonic Wars. The Protestants in the north would have the advantage of experience and concentration of weaponry on their side, but the Catholics vastly outnumbered northern Protestants, and thanks to the greater distribution of weapons on account of early French supplying, are able to wear out the northerners who would be forced to flee to France, though the majority would likely be imprisoned as travel would become incredibly difficult during this turbulent period. With the northern Protestants driven out, the Catholic Celts would be free to establish their own government, one which may well take on less of a republican character and adopt something more akin to a monarchy. Republicanism was basically the communism of the day, anti-religion, anti-hierarchy, and fixated on equality, something which didn't sit well with many of the Catholics. Post-war, there's great opportunity for such a government to receive developmental support from the restored Catholic monarchs of Europe and papal states. Additionally, there may be a restored friendship with Great Britain in the years following the war, as the British wouldn't want Ireland to become an allied outpost to one of its rivals, while at the same time Ireland found it could benefit significantly from trade with the imperial giant Britain was. With Ireland established and recognized as sovereign, as well as suited with a stable government, this could open the door for a more fair relationship between itself and Britain, as far as to establish a dual monarchy much like was the case with Austro-Hungary. With Ireland a fully autonomous kingdom within the United Kingdom, Britain wouldn't need to worry about it one day allying itself to a hostile nation, and vice versa, Ireland is awarded many of the securities it had under British rule without the restrictions. This would become especially beneficial when the potato blight hit. If through fairer trade with Britain, Ireland is able to introduce a wider variety of crops and freely purchase much needed rations through its own finances, the Great Potato Famine may well be averted, retaining both a large quantity of the population that would have been lost to starvation and to emigration to the United States. Overall, the relationship between Ireland and Britain becomes far more beneficial in this world, while the Irish nation itself is given far more time and manpower to build itself to the status of a modern European kingdom. Though with Irish republicanism pushed aside in favor of more traditional conservative monarchism, the culture may take on a character more akin to the stern regimentation of nations like Germany or Austria, perhaps laying the foundations for an era of Irish militarism and domestic zeal that could make it a military powerhouse for the United Kingdom. And that is where I'll end this video for now. The US of Z thanks you for watching. Support your Legion by liking the video or join our ranks by subscribing for more. Mr. Z, out.